So since the last live, you guys have been asking about the status of the, home and all of the renovations and the addition and everything because, we mentioned in the live that concrete guys showed up. It was weird. Like really weird, but we ended up with the foundation. And now we have a big old wall just to do. It's a big old thing, and I'm sure you guys don't care about that, but the new update is we have dropped every single wall in the downstairs of the house. We have dropped the ceiling. It is a disaster. We are reworking beams and floor joists and putting in new walls and doing the. It's a lot, but it's really cool because that means that we are, making progress. So there's your home update. It's a lot, but awesome. So there you go. My house actually has nothing whatsoever to do with the pour, but when does this part of the video ever have anything to do with what we're actually talking about? Very rarely is the answer to that. Yes. And I'm going to tell you what it is that we're doing in just a moment. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for day 57 of 365 days of soap, and today we're doing a back to basics deep dive on things in the soaping world that maybe you have questions about, and I can help you with them. Because I've been doing this for a very, very long time, and I have my background in science, and I like to approach all soaping things from a chemistry perspective. And so for that reason, today's a little bit weird because the video is all about trace. Now, those of you who've been around for a while know that I don't really like using the word trace just because like the descriptive of it is always like, oh, so a thin trace is like a pancake batter. Personally, my pancake batter is always thick AF. I don't know about you, but that's what my pancake batter is, and my pancake batter is delicious. So there's that. And then like a medium trace is like a pudding. And then like a thick trace is like brownie batter, which is making me hungry. And I think maybe that's the reason why I don't like trace in general, because anytime we start talking about it, we always start talking about it in terms of food, and I get hungry. And so maybe that's the real reason why I don't like the word trace. But the point is I'm going to use the word trace today and show you all the different stages so you have a good visual. So we'll go from emulsion to thin trace to medium trace to heavy trace. And we'll also talk about what it is that you can do with the batter in each of those stages, as we're hitting them. So, let's go to the video and do all those things there. Okay, so today we are talking about trace. And, not just talking about it, but, showing you trace. And I know what you're thinking. I know it. I know the question in your mind is, but Mrs. Soap and Clay, why are you talking about trace? You hate trace. And I don't hate what trace represents, like the different thicknesses of soap batter. I love that. That's interesting and awesome. But I hate the term trace, or at least the way that it's described. But the answer to why I'm talking about it is I can't recreate the entire soap world, right? I can't just coin a new phrase and just expect everyone to get on board with it because I'm not that special. So we're going to talk about trace. Now, we did emulsion literally yesterday, right? Pretty sure that was yesterday. Yeah. And so you know what emulsion is, but now we're going to focus on trace and what that looks like. Now, you see how this is sitting on the head really nicely. And the soap batter is not separating and really flying off of, well, not flying off of, dripping off of the head. Oh, God. Yes, so we have a nice emulsion there. Now, the next step after an emulsion would be what is referred to as like a thin trace or a light trace, right? Which is pretty much that right there. So if you drop it down into the actual soap batter and it stays on the surface for, half a nanosecond before popping, down into the batter, you are at a light trace. So that is just past emulsion, and you can soap lots of swirls there. Okay, so if what we have here is light trace, then what does medium trace look like? And again, looking at this, it is a very fluid batter for light trace, thin trace, whatever, that will not suspend. The surface will not suspend the batter on top of it. With medium trace, you can actually start to see trails of the batter being suspended for a little bit, see there, on the surface of the soap. Now, medium trace is going to be really great for swirls for sure, especially like drop swirls. Drop swirls are great with medium trace because the batter has enough heft to it that it will hold up other areas, but still it's fluid enough that you can, still do some decent swirls for sure. And as I am working with the exact same soap batter, and I've put in the kaolin clay with the water here, you can continue to stick blend this to sort of a heavier medium trace, if you will. And by stick blend, I mean hand whisk, because I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I want to go watch Hamilton. But you see how it's sitting up on itself very nicely there? And it's really kind of not so seeping in, but you would not be able to say pipe this, right? Really good for, again, some swirls, some drop swirls, some layered designs, for sure. Now let's go check out heavy trace. Okay, so if medium trace is the surface of the soap will suspend the, little trails of soap, or if you take your whisk to it and pull some up, it will sort of hang out in like soft peaks. Then what is thick trace or heavy trace? Whatever. So I'm showing you from the very beginning again. Let's do an emulsion check. Let's do a light trace check. Let's do a medium trace check. And let's do a thick trace check with this. Lots of checks. Check, check, check. So with this, with a thick trace, you can actually do quite a lot with thick trace. And I don't ever work my soap batter to a thick trace or heavy trace or whatever, because I don't like working with soap that's not really pourable. Now, that's not to say that a heavy trace soap can't be pourable, because it can, but it globs off out in weird ways, and it's all, a thing. So what are we looking at here? Thin trace? Thin trace. Yes. Right? Still a very fluid batter, but the droplets or the trails that you leave on the top of the soap fall into the rest of the soap batter pretty quickly. So keep working. We're going to end up getting a medium trace before I take the stick blender out, I think, and then we'll just whisk it to a heavier trace. So heavy trace soaps are good for layers for sure. Also, I've done piped soap without using. You don't need to use any particular like special recipe for a piped soap if you're wanting to do like those really big high soap tops, right? So now we have a nice, very light medium trace or heavy light trace. It's very confusing. Let's just wait until it's medium trace before you start saying things. There you go. There's a nice medium trace. See that? Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Now, again, back to the piping soap or whatever for like high soap tops, you don't need a special recipe for that. You just need to take your soap and blend it to medium trace and then just set the container aside for like 5 minutes and it thickens up beautifully to be able to pipe, or you can mix it to heavy trace. Either way. Now I am going to mix this soap to a heavy trace, but it's sort of more of a loose heavy trace, but whatever. So again, layers, piping soap, awesome. Solid bars, I actually do recommend getting to at least a medium trace for solid color bars, just to ensure that you actually hit an emulsion to begin with. Because if you don't have all the extra mixing that you would do if you're putting in like your scents or your colors or what have you, just to be sure, the only soaps that I've ever done that have been not fully blended, and so I wouldn't call them, they're not lye heavy. The lye in the batch is fine, but not fully to an emulsion, or not quite at any point. Whatever. Not the point for this video. Would be soaps that have no scent, no color, and I'm just mixing it, and I ultimately ended up getting like a false trace that ended up being a bar of soap that had, or a batch of soap that had a little bit of problems. So for solid color soaps, for soaps without any extra mixing that you're going to be doing throughout the pour, I do recommend getting to at least a medium trace, if not a heavy trace, because the heavy trace is actually going to be better and easier to work with solid color bars, as well as with, again, layered soaps, those sorts of things. Now, the additives that you put in, be it the clays or the scent, those do speed up trace. They accelerate trace quite a bit depending on what you're working with. And so that's why I always say stop an emulsion for most circumstances, right? Because you're going to be putting in something else, some oatmeal or some kaolin clay or some bentonite clay or a scent that you haven't worked with. Every time that you start mixing your soap, you're continuing on with the mixy mix thing that will get to, emulsion, right? Or get to a thicker trace. Every time you work that soap batter, you are speeding up those particles, making that saponification thing, jumpstart. And so for that reason, if you're going to be mixing a whole bunch of colors, I'm like, stop an emulsion for sure. But if you're not doing that and you're just doing some layers, or you're like mixing out your layers individually, yeah, for sure, go for like a heavy trace, a thick trace, because it will take less time between layers for the layer that you just poured to set up. And we often do that. I don't know that I ever show it in the video. I think I mostly cut it out. But when we are doing layered soaps, we will, whatever portion that we're working on first, we will take it out of the just emulsified soap batter and color it, scent it, and then take the stick blender to it and work it to a heavy trace to make sure that it sets up in the mold fast enough that we can, continue working with the layers and not have to wait for, 10, 15 minutes between pouring, because also the soap batter in your mold or in your big bucket, that's getting thick too. Now, see, this is a very light heavy trace. You're right at a heavy trace. You see how it's definitely holding up on its own. It's not pouring well. It's fluid-ish, but you see how that soap, when I put the Pyrex down, it did not go back into the container and sort of level the surface out, right? It just sort of stayed right there at the nose. It is definitely at that heavy trace place. Now, you can get thicker for sure, but anything after, not much thicker than this, you're dealing with soap on a stick. And you don't ever want soap on a stick, like for sure. Although that works too. If you ever end up over blending or your fragrance accelerates like a mother, it's fine. Just plop it in and take your gloved hands and press everything down into the mold. Eliminate as many air pockets as you can, and it's still soap. It's more rustic looking, but it's still soap. The reason why I don't like going really past this for a heavy trace is because I don't like air pockets in my soap. And also I still want it to look smooth and shiny and not rustic, really. So that would be the heaviest trace that I'm ever comfortable using. But as you can see, even using that, such a pain in the ass, right? Like that's really, really quite a pain. And did you see my little masked face there? That was cute. That was cute. How's the mask situation where you guys are? I'm still masked, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm fully vaccinated, But I kind of like the idea of masks because I don't like getting sick. And so, I don't know, I may stay masked forever and just be weird, but that's fine. So yeah, the really the best way to work with batter like this is to just scoop and scrape and scoop and scrape. If I had poured this at a thin trace, I would have already been done like 10 minutes ago because it just pours right out of the container into there so nicely. But, you know, I'm showing you the things. And so I did the thing. Look what I did for you. You know, just kidding. It's actually not really for you specifically because this particular fragrance oil that goes into these shampoo bars and just the formulation of these shampoo bars makes for a very thick soap anyway. But yeah, no, that's all things Trace. Now you have some visuals to go with the weird terms, and I hope you guys learned something. That is a day 57, and like, it's cool, right? Yeah. And there you have it, all things Trace. Yes, so there's a nice visual for you as to what that all means and what you can look for within your soap, and also what you can do with it, as well as how much time you kind of have to do with it. What? You know what I mean? Before it gets to the next stage and gets too thick and all the things. Yes, I hope you guys learned something today, or, you know, just enjoyed yourself in general, because it's both around here. Like, I hope that it's entertaining-ish. I don't know. I have fun. So, you know, that's cool. And for the sudsers that are sudsers and have subscribed, it seems like you're having fun. And so that's also cool. And I appreciate that you are subscribed. If you are like brand new to the channel this exact moment, and this is the first time seeing me, hey, subscribe. You could be a sudser, and that would be awesome. If you are interested in any soaps that have reached some form of trace, you can get them at soapandclay.com because that's all of them. I do appreciate you for joining me for another day of 365 days of soap, for sure. I'm out of here for 2 days because I actually have some cleaning up to do in the aforementioned, you know, house addition and remodel and whatever this afternoon yet. And so I have to get to that. I will see you guys all again tomorrow for another round of soapy fun. Bye.